Just let's kind of cut to the chase, if you will, here a minute, so I'm not in terrible shadow. Where are we today in terms of Casolitas drop-offs by the Border Patrol?
So that's a good question. It's been changing by the hour. So the way I've been approaching it as the communications director is no news is good news. So if bad news was happening, which means we had imminent street releases, they would have put up the bat signal and alerted me, and I would be participating in an all-call meeting. So that hasn't happened. So I'm operating under the assumption that everything is going fine. I do know earlier today that they were pretty sure that they would be able to accommodate the afternoon releases from the border counties. I haven't heard yet since earlier this afternoon how it's going with the evening releases, or whether there's going to be evening releases. I do know that we've had historic number of releases in the last 4 days. I think it's getting up to more than 5,000 to maybe even 6,000 just in the last 4 days. We've never seen release volumes like that. 2,000 yesterday. That's far in excess of the amount of people that have been released to us in a single day before. And so I've said this before, and the miracle workers who are in the system and Catholic Community Services have managed to keep people sheltered, and so we haven't had those street releases. And there were times where it was 1,100 a day and then 1,300 a day. I'm sure we were going to have street releases, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen yesterday. So far, it hasn't happened today. So fingers crossed that they continue to provide these people shelter and they don't have to spend a night on the street.
So you're saying between 5,000 and 6,000 cumulative altogether over the last 4 days?
Yeah.
To Casolitas, to where they all initially come to Casolitas, and then they get taken to hotels or wherever for their temporary shelter. When we spoke, I know you spoke with Lupita on Tuesday, but when we spoke a couple of months ago and street releases were potentially imminent for the first time, you had said this hasn't happened in 4.5 years since the county and the city and Catholic Community Services started this partnership to house migrants temporarily. I guess I wonder, is it somewhat surreal that it's come to this point for the first time in 4.5 years?
Surreal is a word for it. Disappointing and frustrating are a couple other words. I mean, it's been 4.5 years. We would have hoped that the U.S. government, the Congress, the administration, whether the previous administration or the current administration, would have taken steps to resolve this situation, either change the asylum law rules, provide more resources to the Border Patrol, to immigration authorities for post-processing relief, so that local communities, border communities, don't have to deal with these street releases. Something that they might have been done. It's just been the same thing over and over again, day after day, week after week for 4.5 years. It's been rather frustrating.
You mentioned change the asylum rule laws. Do you mean to make it more stringent for people to go through the asylum process? In other words, the application process will be tighter. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of steps in the asylum process. One of the, and I don't want to speak for the Border Patrol or offer opinions about what I think Border Patrol could be doing, but just as an example, some of the ideas that I've seen is potentially having the adjudication of the asylum claims occur much sooner and at the border, rather than the way it's happening now, where it's many years in the future, months in the future, years in the future, and in other communities. It just seems like there's lots of good ideas that could be kicked around that could find themselves written into law. It's just frustrating it hasn't happened yet.
Do you guys have a plan if and when it comes to street releases and the possibility that migrants are dropped off at the Greyhound station here in Tucson. Who would be dropped off and street released first? Is there a plan in place as to who specifically gets the first call?
If it gets to the point where we're no longer able to provide shelter, or we've reached the maximum amount of people that we can take in a given day, and there's still more people that have been released, we will prioritize it so that vulnerable people are sheltered. The absolute last thing we want to have happen is to have children on the streets overnight in the cold, or anybody for that matter, but children in particular. So we're going to emphasize families for sheltering first when we get to that situation, and then the single adults who are almost always or most majority male or men. They'll be the ones who would probably be more likely to get released. They often also have their own plan in effect. They know where they're going. They got a place to go. Sometimes they have their own resources. We're seeing single adult males that are being released that are acquiring plane tickets that day, and all they need from us really is a ride to the airport. And so that's going to be the priority for if someone has to end up on the street, that it be that and it not be mothers and children.
Have there been talks with churches, religious institutions to open their doors? I know that happened before the partnership several years, in the years leading up to that happened in some cases. Is that a possibility this time around?
The interfaith community has just been incredible. I mean, they're primarily the ones who are providing the sheltering services. A number of faith communities in Phoenix have begun participating. A lot of a significant percentages of the releases that have been happening are getting diverted to Phoenix, to the shelters up there. They're almost entirely churches. There's been some churches in faith communities in Douglas that have agreed to take people for an overnight. If we can't come and get them in the bus to bring them up here in a timely manner for a late release, say in Douglas in the evening, these churches are allowing those people to stay there for overnight, and then we'll get them in the morning. And so that has been incredible. I mean, if there are other faith communities that want to participate, we're more than welcome to have them join the system. I can't hear you.
I have to unmute here. I know you and probably County Administrator Lesher and the board, you all may have been in contact with the state over the last few days. Governor Hobbs just this afternoon sending a letter to the White House urging them to activate the National Guard and send more than 200 troops to the border to reopen the Lukeville port of entry. I wonder if the county would be supportive of that.
Pima County supports any effort being made by the governor, by the state of Arizona, to help relieve what's happening here in the border counties, Pima, Cochise, and Santa Cruz County. Anything that she's doing to help is more than welcome.
Is this the worst that it's been?
Yes.
Since this began?
By far. By far. It's never been like this. So to put it into context, when we first got into this in 2019, we were scrambling to find sheltering resources for 100 people who had been released that day by the Border Patrol. We had the shelter that we assisted, Catholic Community Services, which was the monastery that was over on Tucson Boulevard. I remember when there were 300 releases in a day and the system came close to breaking and we didn't know what we were going to do. Then we added the shelter, the more permanent shelter, since the monastery had to close because it was being redeveloped, in our old juvenile facility. Then we added the hotel contracts. Then we found the big box building over on Drexel that we converted. So as the releases has just continued to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, we have expanded and expanded the system, but only because we've been able to get reimbursed by the federal government. I think we've reached the point where we can't get much bigger than we are now. And so now it's incumbent that we continue to get the funds. The thing that we're most concerned about is the funding stream that we're about to start using. We'll expend all those funds by February. If the Congress hasn't approved further funding or solved the border crisis altogether, then we won't be able to shelter anybody. And so you could have a day like today where there were yesterday where there are 2,000 people released and there's no place for them at all. And so they will be on the streets of Pima County and Douglas and Nogales and some of the other border communities where they're being released. And that's just unthinkable. It's unacceptable. We're doing absolutely everything we can to avoid that, but we need the federal government to pay for it.
Follow up with this last line of questioning before I let you go, and just say thank you so much for taking the time right now in such a crucial time. But I've been following this of late, and now there is border security and border funding tied to Israel and Ukraine support, or tied to something else. Should there be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't want to have you speak for the county as a whole, but should there be a standalone bill that addresses this?
The situation that's occurring on the border is a long-standing humanitarian crisis that is occurring every single day. We've been able to avoid the negative effects of that crisis by creating a system of sheltering to prevent people on our streets without resources, without food, without shelter from the heat or the cold or the rain or the snow. That's a broken system, and we would support any effort by the Congress to fix that.
I just want to make sure that I have it in my notes where the funding right now from the federal government, the funding that's used to house these migrants temporarily within the Casolitas system in Pima County and the hotels that you contract with, that would run out by February. Is that correct?
That's our estimation currently. The county administrator sent a communication to the Board of Supervisors yesterday where she stated she's asked all of the county departments that are involved in the coordination of this sheltering system to stretch every dollar. So we're doing absolutely everything we can to get every value out of every dollar we spend. For instance, through our system, we've had a vendor where we have been providing meals to the people who are spending an entire day with us. And those are full hot meals. I'm uncertain of the amount, but I'm just going to throw this out as an example. Those meals, each meal costs $15. So if we have 1,000 people that we need to feed 3 times a day, it's 3,000 times 15. That's a lot of money. We're going to switch to MREs, and we think that the MREs are only going to cost us $5 a day. Now, MREs are full nutrition. It's the full amount of calories. It's not quite the same quality as the hot prepared meals, but it makes sure that we're going to have enough money to get us to February at least, and keep people properly fed and getting the proper nutrition that they need.
Finally, I guess, what are some of the words that come to mind when you try to wrap your head around all of this?
I think I said them earlier, which is it's frustrating. Frankly, it's exhausting. I can't even begin to tell you just how tired the people are who have been providing this support on the ground day to day. The people at Catholic Community Services, at Casa Solitas, at the Inn Project with the Methodist Church, the other people who are doing the transporting and the medical screening. I don't like throwing the term out all that much because it doesn't mean anything if you say it too much, but I think they're heroes. It's just heroic what's going on. And there's no relief. There's no day off. There's no, okay, the Border Patrol is not releasing anybody today because today's a holiday. It's every single day for 4.5 years, except for the pandemic. But since January 2021, every single day, several hundred people to more than 1,000 people have been released by Border Patrol. We can't stop. We can't take a break. We have to continue to support them. And it's been, frankly, exhausting.
And you say over the last few days, it's been 5,000 to 6,000. So that's averaging 11 to 1,300 a day.
It's more than that. We did 2,000 yesterday, 1,800 the day before that. It was similar to that. I'm losing track of which day it is. On Tuesday, it was around those similar numbers. All last week, the averages were 1,000 to 1,100. We've never seen it like this. We've seen it peak up to 1,000, but then stay a couple of days and then drop back down again. It has been 900 to or more since September. And that's just been completely exhausting, and it taxes all of our resources, and it's caused us to burn through the available funding much, much faster than we were.
And that is, everybody goes through Casa Salitas first, correct? That's the drop off point. Is that right?
Sort of.
Oh, okay.
Most people are coming to Casa Salitas. We are able to divert some of the people straight to Maricopa County for the shelters up there. So we account for those releases because they occurred in our counties, but they don't enter the Casa Salitas system. They enter the system that's established up in Maricopa County. And I don't have a lot of information on that. That's not my bailiwick.
And finally, today it looks as though you're in the clear. No street releases here in Pima County at to this point.
So far, last I heard, yeah.
Mark Evans, Pima County Communications Director. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you to your colleagues as well.
Sure.
Please be safe.
All right.
Good to see you, Mark. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Hey, man, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you stop recording?
Sure.